Karoline Leavitt overhears a senator mocking her. Her response leaves him speechless on live TV. Hook! He thought she wouldn't hear him. But Karoline Leavitt caught every word. What she did next. It left the entire room in stunned silence. Karoline Leavitt stood quietly backstage, adjusting the small microphone clip to her jacket. Bright stage lights cast a warm glow on the polished floor beneath her feet. Technicians bustled around, preparing the cameras, double-checking the audio equipment. Karoline glanced around the TV studio, calm but alert, mentally reviewing her talking points. She'd done interviews countless times before, yet something about tonight felt different. Perhaps it was the nature of the debate. The upcoming segment was on education policy, a topic Karoline passionately cared about. Or perhaps it was simply the unusual tension in the air, subtle yet palpable, making even the crew shift uncomfortably in their chairs. Karoline stepped toward the green room for a quick sip of water. The halls were quiet, lined with photos of past guests, faces that smiled blandly from framed images. She nodded politely to a few familiar faces, politicians, advisors, media personalities, waiting patiently backstage. That's when she heard it. The voice was deep, instantly recognizable. Senator Charles Brennan, a senior lawmaker known for his fiery speeches and razor-sharp wit, stood just out of sight, engaged in quiet conversation with another senator. You see who they got tonight. Brennan chuckled dismissively. Karoline Leavitt. Can't believe they're sending her. What is she? 25, maybe 26 years old. They're not even trying anymore. Karoline felt the words like a sudden slap. Her heart pounded unexpectedly. The senator's voice continued smoothly, completely unaware she stood just around the corner, listening. She's barely out of college. What does she even know about real policy? Probably just reading a script someone wrote for her. Another voice laughed quietly, a fellow senator's, someone Karoline had also respected deeply. Well, you know how these things go. Put a pretty young face on TV, get some good optics, score some points. She's just a spokesperson. No depth, just good camera presence. Karoline's hands tightened instinctively, anger mixing sharply with hurt. She stood frozen, unsure how to respond. This wasn't mere criticism. This was mockery, dismissive arrogance from two influential lawmakers she had considered allies. She could have walked away quietly, ignored the slight, pretended not to hear. That would have been easier, safer politically, less confrontational. But that wasn't who Karoline was. Her entire career, short though it might be, had been built on courage, integrity, and speaking truth, even when it was uncomfortable, especially when it was uncomfortable. Karoline straightened, took a slow breath, then rounded the corner deliberately, stepping directly into view. The senator's conversation halted instantly. Senator Brennan's expression shifted subtly from amusement to mild surprise, his eyes narrowing briefly. Ms. Leavitt, he said cautiously, clearly wondering how much he'd overheard. Didn't see you there. Karoline didn't blink. Clearly, Senator. Silence stretched uncomfortably. Brennan cleared his throat, attempting casual politeness. We were just discussing tonight's program. You're well prepared, I trust. Karoline maintained perfect composure, though a heartbeat thundered in her chest. Yes, Senator Brennan. Despite my age, I'm fully capable of discussing real policy issues. He cleared his throat awkwardly, realizing immediately his words had reached unintended ears. I'm sure you are, he said cautiously, shifting his stance slightly. Karoline stood still, calmly composed. She didn't offer him an easy escape. Instead, she met his gaze directly, allowing silence to linger just long enough for discomfort to creep into the moment. Then, quietly but firmly, she spoke again. Senator, I respect you greatly, which is why I found your comments disappointing. I've always believed that respect for differing viewpoints is essential, even behind closed doors. Senator Brennan hesitated, clearly unsure how to respond. His colleague discreetly stepped aside, attempting to distance himself from the unfolding scene. Karoline continued evenly, not allowing her emotions to dictate her tone. I may be younger than you, Senator, but that doesn't mean I lack experience, intelligence, or integrity. Judging someone's capability by their age alone isn't just dismissive. It's beneath the dignity of your office. He shifted uncomfortably, visibly unsettled by her directness. Ms. Leavitt, it was simply private talk. Karoline cut him off gently yet firmly. Respectfully, Senator, words matter, especially when you think no one's listening. Leadership isn't about how we speak in public. It's about who we are when no one's watching. I hope you remember that. Without waiting for his reply, Karoline turned smoothly, walking back toward the stage entrance. Her heartbeat slowed gradually, the tension fading slightly as she refocused on the interview ahead. She knew clearly that confronting Brennan privately wasn't enough. She'd have to address this publicly, clearly, firmly, without compromise. She owed that not merely to herself, but to every young person dismissed solely because of their age or background. Minutes later, beneath glaring studio lights, Karoline sat calmly opposite the television host. Cameras trained on her, ready to broadcast live to millions nationwide. The senator she confronted backstage sat quietly just across from her, visibly tense but trying to maintain a composed facade. The host introduced a segment, smoothly transitioning into a discussion of education policy. Karoline answered calmly, confidently, clearly showcasing her depth of knowledge. Facts, figures, and nuanced understanding effortlessly delivered. Then, as the segment progressed, the host turned unexpectedly towards Senator Brennan. Senator Brennan, you've expressed skepticism about younger voices shaping policy debates. Care to elaborate? The senator shifted uncomfortably, clearly caught off guard. I think experience matters. Policy decisions affect millions. It's not the time for idealism or inexperience. The host turned immediately toward Karoline. Ms. Leavitt, your response. Karoline took a deep breath, speaking firmly yet respectfully. Experience matters. Yes, but true leadership isn't just about the number of years served. It's about integrity, respect, and character. Earlier tonight, backstage, I overheard Senator Brennan questioning my credibility based solely on my age. Leadership isn't belittling someone behind closed doors. It's engaging honestly in debates, respecting differing viewpoints, and focusing on solutions rather than dismissing voices you disagree with. The senator's face paled slightly, stunned by a candid response. Cameras caught every subtle expression, every tense muscle, every uncomfortable shift. The host hesitated briefly, then quickly seized the moment. Senator Brennan, would you like to respond? Brennan opened his mouth to speak, paused, then shut it again. Silence lingered, thick, electric. Live television capturing the rare moment clearly, a veteran senator rendered speechless by a younger politician he had underestimated. Karoline continued calmly, not allowing anger or triumph tea, respect and dignity. If we can't practice that among ourselves, how can we expect the American people to trust us? The studio fell into quiet, stunned silence. Finally, Senator Brennan nodded slightly, clearly humbled. You're right, Ms. Leavitt. I apologize sincerely. Karoline nodded, maintaining dignity without gloating. I accept your apology, Senator. The cameras kept rolling, capturing profound shift, one senator's arrogance replaced by humility, and a young woman's remarkable courage inspiring millions watching at home. The silence that followed Karoline's candid revelation on live TV was deafening. For a moment, Senator Brennan looked as though he'd forgotten how to breathe. The cameras, relentlessly trained on him, captured every nuance of his expression, disbelief turning swiftly to embarrassment, a flicker of irritation, then finally quiet Rizio enter her voice. Senator, this isn't about you or me personally. It's about something big, Ignatian. His mouth opened briefly, searching for words, but none came. Across from him, Karoline sat poised, composed yet firm, her eyes never leaving his face. There was no animosity, no smug satisfaction in her gaze, just genuine determination to stand her ground. The moment felt intensely private despite millions watching at home, as if a veil had momentarily lifted, exposing raw truth that politicians rarely allowed the public to see. The host cleared his throat gently, breaking the tension. Senator Brennan, do you have any response to Ms. Leavitt's statement? Senator Brennan finally spoke, his voice strained yet carefully controlled. Obviously, Ms. Leavitt's remarks deserve consideration. I apologize if my earlier comments were misunderstood or offensive. Karoline remained composed, resisting any urge to respond immediately. She knew clearly that speaking now would dilute the powerful impact her words had already achieved. She let the silence linger, knowing sometimes silence itself spoke louder than any words possibly could. The host glanced between Karoline and Brennan before smoothly shifting focus. Perhaps we can move to another subject. Actually, Brennan interrupted suddenly, his voice softer now, unexpectedly reflective. I'd like to respond directly. The camera zoomed tighter. Karoline held her breath, unsure of what he might say next. Ms. Leavitt is correct, Brennan said slowly, clearly weighing his words carefully. I made an inappropriate comment earlier this evening, a careless remark I sincerely regret. It was not intended to be malicious, but I can see clearly how dismissive it appeared. Karoline, you were right to call me out. Age shouldn't determine respect or credibility. Karoline felt genuine surprise. She'd expected defensiveness, denial, even anger, but not the sincere admission. Her expression softened slightly, appreciative but cautious. Senator Brennan, thank you for acknowledging that, she replied gently. All I ever wanted was mutual respect. When leaders dismiss younger voices, we risk silencing important perspectives that can genuinely move our country forward. He nodded thoughtfully, humility evident. I understand now. Sometimes, even we in positions of power need reminders about humility. Thank you for reminding me. The host, sensing resolution, smoothly guided the conversation to other topics. Yet, something profound had shifted in the studio that evening, not merely between Karoline and the senator, but in the minds of viewers nationwide who witnessed firsthand how dignity, courage, and humility could genuinely reshape even the harshest political debates. Immediately after the broadcast, Karoline walked quietly down the studio hallway, heart still beating fast. Her phone vibrated relentlessly in her pocket, messages, notifications, missed calls already pouring in. The moment had clearly resonated, and she knew the impact was only beginning to unfold. As she reached her office, aides approached rapidly, expressions mixed between excitement and anxiety. It's trending already, one aide announced breathlessly, waving a phone in the air. Every network picked it up. Leavitt confronts Senator live on air. It's everywhere. Karoline nodded, feeling equal parts validation and apprehension. This wasn't the kind of notoriety she'd ever wanted, yet she knew clearly the significance of what she'd done. She turned to her chief aide, Emily, who stood quietly nearby. How's the reaction? Mixed, the aide admitted honestly, scanning her phone screen. Some commentators are praising your courage, especially younger voters. But critics are calling it disrespectful or opportunistic. Karoline nodded, unsurprised. She'd known from the moment she stepped in front of those cameras that her words would polarize. Yet she didn't regret speaking up, no matter the fallout. Just then, a gentle knock at the door startled them all. Senator Brennan stood hesitantly in the doorway, holding his hat humbly in his hands, looking unusually vulnerable. Could I have a word privately, Karoline? Her aides quickly dispersed, closing the door quietly behind them. Brennan stood in silence, hands folded, clearly uncomfortable. Senator, Karoline began gently, sensing his hesitation, I didn't intend to embarrass you publicly. He interrupted softly. Karoline, I embarrassed myself. I should have known better. You reminded me tonight of something I'd forgotten, the importance of humility. Honestly, it's something many of us forget in Washington. You had every right to speak up. Karoline exhaled slowly, feeling unexpected empathy toward this man she'd always respected. She gestured to a nearby chair, offering a quiet moment to sit and talk openly. He took the seat, leaning forward slightly. It's easy, in politics, to see adversaries everywhere. Even allies become rivals. But what you did tonight reminded me clearly of why we're really here, to listen, understand, respect each other. Regardless of age or experience, we're all here to serve. Karoline felt herself relaxing slightly, moved by the senator's genuine humility. She responded sincerely. Senator, tonight wasn't about scoring points. It was about dignity. Young people feel dismissed far too often, ignored because our experiences differ from those who've held power longer. I had to speak up, not only for myself, but for everyone who's been underestimated because of their age. Brennan nodded slowly, understanding evident in his eyes. You're right. And tonight, millions saw that clearly, including me. I've been in politics a long time. maybe too long to notice when arrogance replaced humility. Karoline softened. Senator, acknowledging that is courageous. It's the kind of leadership we desperately need more of. The senator smiled softly, respect clear in his gaze. Thank you, Karoline. You have wisdom beyond your years, something I foolishly overlooked. Later that night, alone in her apartment, Karoline reflected carefully on the dramatic evening. The national conversation had already begun shifting. Discussions about youth, leadership, dignity, and humility-filled news segments, opinion columns, and social media posts. Yet beneath headlines and trending hashtags, Karoline found herself more reflective, considering the deeper meaning behind her actions. She hadn't confronted Senator Brennan out of anger or spite, but out of a genuine commitment to integrity, transparency, and respect. Her phone vibrated again. This time, a message from Senator Brennan appeared. It was short, simple, and genuine. Karoline, tonight you taught an old senator a valuable lesson. I'm grateful for your courage. The country needs voices like yours, now more than ever. A quiet smile appeared on her face, genuine and relieved. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. Critics would continue questioning her motives. Some media outlets would spin narratives negatively. But tonight, Karoline felt something deeply valuable, clarity of purpose and strength born from speaking truth openly and honestly. As she set her phone aside, feeling calm yet determined, Karoline understood clearly that her role now reached far beyond political spokesperson or media figurehead. She had become something far more meaningful, a voice for dignity, humility, and courage, and she was determined never again to remain silent when respect and integrity demanded she speak clearly. In politics, she understood moments like tonight were rare, where authenticity overcame theater, sincerity outshined spectacle, and humility replaced arrogance. Karoline knew clearly she had seized such a moment, not merely to defend herself, but to inspire meaningful change nationwide. The fallout from Karoline's televised exchange with Senator Brennan was immediate and overwhelming. Within mere hours, social media erupted into fierce debate. Clips of their exchange flooded timelines, shared millions of times, each viewer taking sides, Karoline as a fearless young leader demanding respect, or as an upstart disrespecting seasoned authority. The next morning, Karoline awoke to hundreds of messages, support, anger, confusion, and requests for comment from every major news network. She knew her decision to confront the senator live had sparked intense reactions across the political spectrum. It was daunting, but Karoline had no regrets. She'd done what her conscience had demanded. Spoken truth to power respectfully yet firmly, demanding dignity in a world where political discourse had become toxic. Walking into her office at Capitol Hill, Karoline found her staff anxiously gathered around the TV. News anchors discuss her exchange nonstop, dissecting every word, expression, and gesture. When she appeared, silence fell instantly across the room. "How bad?" Karoline asked, sipping coffee, readying herself for the day ahead. Emily, her aide, smiled reassuringly. "Not bad, actually. Controversial, but powerful. You're trending everywhere. Fearless Leavitt is even a hashtag." Karoline sighed slightly, smiling despite herself. At least it's not villain of democracy. Emily laughed softly. True, and Senator Brennan issued another statement. This one was more formal and respectful. He praised you publicly for reminding him of humility and respect. Karoline nodded appreciatively. Is genuinely trying. That takes courage. Emily glanced hesitantly at Karoline. But not everyone's convinced. You're booked for a CNN panel tonight. They are positioning this as a generational showdown. Karoline raised an eyebrow. Of course they are. Ratings, clicks, confrontation sells. But I'll use it to emphasize the real message, dignity. Emily smiled, relieved. I'll prep your talking points. No, Karoline interrupted gently. I don't want scripted talking points tonight. This needs authenticity. Emily hesitated, then smiled warmly, respecting Karoline's determination. Understood. We'll trust your instincts. That evening, Karoline sat calmly beneath bright studio lights, heart steady, ready for whatever came next. Opposite her sat veteran political analyst. including a prominent liberal commentator famous for heated exchanges, as well as respected political analyst Miranda Brooks, known for thoughtful yet tough questions. The host, David Miller, introduced the segment, setting a tense stage immediately. Karoline, your exchange with Senator Brennan has become symbolic of broader tensions in American politics: age, respect, experience. Was your confrontation an intentional message? Karoline responded clearly, thoughtfully. It wasn't staged. I overheard something disrespectful and chose to address it directly, not out of spite, but because respect matters. Young people are constantly told to wait their turn or defer to experience. But experience doesn't excuse disrespect. Another panelist quickly jumped in, political commentator Richard Gregory, notorious for provocative questioning. Karoline, isn't respect earned? Many viewers see your response as youthful arrogance, not courage. Karoline remained composed. Respect must be mutual. I consistently respected senior leaders. But respect is earned by how we treat others, publicly and privately. What I overheard wasn't respectful. It wasn't leadership. And speaking up against that isn't arrogance, it's integrity. The commentator hesitated, caught off guard by Karoline's calm conviction. But surely you understand the optics, he pressed. Some see you as confrontational, dismissing experience in favor of youthful idealism. Karoline smiled slightly. I appreciate the experience. I seek mentorship. But dismissing someone's ideas solely based on their age, dismissing their capabilities outright, that's destructive. Leadership is about character and values, not just tenure. The studio audience murmured appreciatively. Miranda, the veteran journalist known for balanced analysis, leaned in gently. Karoline, your interaction with Senator Brennan seems to represent something broader, a cultural shift, perhaps. Young leaders challenging entrenched attitudes. Was this about generational change? Karoline nodded thoughtfully. Yes, not to dismiss past generations, but to emphasize collaboration and mutual respect. We need experienced voices, but equally, we need young voices. We cannot solve modern problems without fresh perspectives. Wisdom isn't defined by age. It comes from humility, empathy, and the willingness to listen regardless of who speaks. Miranda smiled approvingly. Yet critics suggest younger leaders lack the experience to grasp nuanced policy issues. How do you respond? Karoline's voice was calm yet firm. We learn by engaging, by being part of the conversation, not by being excluded. Experience matters deeply, but experience doesn't automatically guarantee wisdom or empathy. Leadership requires humility, empathy, integrity, qualities that transcend age. The panelists paused, quietly impressed by Karoline's nuanced, sincere responses. Her confidence was tempered by genuine humility, her tone respectful yet unwavering. The conversation continued respectfully, surprisingly civil, thoughtful, substantive. Afterward, Miranda privately approached Karoline, clearly impressed. You handled yourself well. Many politicians lose sight of sincerity. Keep speaking authentically. The country needs more of that. Karoline smiled appreciatively. I intend to. Karoline's presence on the CNN panel had done more than clarify her own position. It sparked a national debate about respect, generational divides, and political culture. Articles flooded social media, reflecting on the changing dynamics in politics, questioning why younger voices were so frequently ignored. Karoline's sincerity resonated deeply with millions, particularly younger audiences. Students, young activists, and emerging leaders reached out with gratitude, sharing their own stories of feeling overlooked, dismissed, or patronized. In the days that followed, Karoline realized this incident had transformed her position, not merely as a political figure, but as a powerful symbol for a new generation seeking respectful inclusion in governance. Yet, privately, she also knew the burden of this responsibility. Public scrutiny was intense. Critics watched eagerly, waiting for her to stumble. At night, alone in her apartment, Karoline often read messages from young people inspired by her courage, deeply understanding the profound impact of her decision. Their stories moved her, strengthened her resolve, reminding her daily why standing firmly for dignity and respect was essential, even when difficult. A week after the CNN interview, Karoline was invited unexpectedly to meet privately with Senator Elizabeth Garner, a Democrat from California known for progressive values and outspoken feminism. Garner greeted Karoline warmly, genuine respect evident in her gaze. "I watched your CNN segment, Karoline," Senator Garner began kindly, "and I saw what happened with Senator Brennan. It resonated with me deeply." Karoline smiled slightly, appreciative yet cautious. "Thank you, Senator. But may I ask why you reached out?" Garner leaned forward earnestly. "Because respect isn't a partisan issue. Young women in politics often face precisely the disrespect you confronted, dismissive comments, patronizing attitudes. Your courage wasn't partisan, it was universally meaningful." Karoline exhaled softly, appreciating Garner's sincerity. "It wasn't easy. I never wanted conflict, but I realized silence only reinforced the disrespect." Senator Garner nodded gently. "Precisely why I admire you. You spoke truthfully, not angrily, not defensively, but firmly, respectfully. That's real leadership." Their conversation continued, deeply honest, bridging partisan divides through mutual understanding. Garner offered Karoline valuable advice, not merely political strategy, but authentic mentorship born from years navigating similar battles. By the time they parted, both felt quietly optimistic, sensing they'd forged a deeper connection based on shared integrity and respect rather than party lines. Weeks passed, and Karoline's actions continued to resonate nationwide. Universities, political organizations, and even bipartisan think tanks invited her to speak, not only about policy but about leadership, integrity, and the importance of speaking truth openly. Each engagement reinforced clearly what Karoline had always intuitively known. People respected courage when delivered authentically. She spoke openly about dignity, about genuine leadership, and about the need to elevate young voices, not to dismiss experience but to embrace different perspectives in shaping policy. And slowly, public conversation shifted. Discussions turned increasingly toward inclusivity, mutual respect, and the value younger generations brought to political discourse. Late one night, Karoline sat quietly in her apartment, writing thoughtfully in her journal, reflecting deeply on her journey. She had never planned to become a symbol for generational change, but she embraced it fully, understanding clearly that leadership demanded standing firm when easier paths existed. She wrote carefully, "Respect is fundamental, not earned through age or experience alone, but by integrity, empathy, and humility." What started as a confrontation became something more, a conversation about dignity and mutual understanding. "And if this is my legacy, reminding people to see beyond labels, age, or party, to see each other clearly, then every challenge was worth it." Karoline closed the journal, feeling profound clarity. She knew clearly the road ahead would hold challenges, but also extraordinary opportunities to inspire meaningful change. And she was ready. In the days following Karoline's televised encounter with Senator Brennan, media attention swelled beyond anything she'd ever anticipated. Talk shows, podcasts, opinion segments. Everyone seemed eager to weigh in. Her inbox overflowed with interview requests from major news networks, podcasts, and political bloggers desperate to capture more of her story. Karoline quickly realized she'd inadvertently become a national figure, not just another politician in Washington, but a genuine symbol of resilience, courage, and the struggle to be taken seriously regardless of age. Yet Karoline knew the real challenge was managing the narrative. Politics, after all, was as much about perception as policy. She faced a difficult choice: stay silent, letting others define her story, or step forward decisively and speak for herself. For Karoline, silence had never been an option. She had learned early in life that letting others define your identity was the quickest route to losing control entirely. She decided it was time to speak clearly once again. Within days, Karoline found herself invited to one of the country's most influential political talk shows, Inside Washington. Hosted by respected anchor and journalist Catherine Sullivan, the show was known for its depth, fairness, and incisive analysis. Karoline knew appearing on Catherine's show wasn't just an interview, it was an opportunity to truly shape public opinion. The studio felt tense, electric with anticipation as Karoline took her seat. Across from her, Catherine Sullivan sat poised, notes neatly arranged, her gaze both reassuring and curious. Karoline, you become the center of a heated national debate since your encounter with Senator Brennan, Catherine began calmly. Do you believe your age genuinely affects your credibility? Karoline spoke thoughtfully, calmly meeting Catherine's eyes. Age can influence experience, but credibility should be about integrity, honesty, and the ability to engage respectfully with those who disagree. What Senator Brennan expressed privately and publicly was dismissive simply because of my age. I confronted him because I believe no one, especially a senior leader, should judge a person's worth solely based on how long they've lived rather than their ideas and actions. Catherine nodded thoughtfully. Some have suggested your response was disrespectful. How do you respond to that? Karoline exhaled gently, clearly having anticipated the question. Respect must be mutual. I've always shown respect, even toward those who disagree with me. But respect doesn't mean silence in the face of dismissiveness or disrespect. What I did wasn't disrespectful. It was standing firm. If we truly value free discourse, honesty matters more than politeness, especially when people's worth is being undermined. Catherine leaned forward slightly, intrigued. You've clearly struck a nerve, especially with younger voters. Why do you think your response resonated so deeply? Karoline smiled slightly, sincere yet determined. Because people recognize authenticity. Politics has become performative, scripted, insincere. What people saw that night wasn't performance. It was genuine. It was a reminder that respect isn't conditional on age or political affiliation. Every voice deserves dignity. Catherine paused, clearly impressed. Do you think Senator Brennan genuinely regrets his remarks, or was his apology just damage control? Karoline considered carefully before responding. I believe he meant it. Privately, Senator Brennan admitted he'd allowed arrogance to cloud his judgment. It takes strength to acknowledge that publicly, and I respect him deeply for it. That's what politics should look like, honest accountability, genuine humility. Catherine nodded thoughtfully. You received enormous support from younger voters, but harsh criticism from senior political figures who argue youth lacks essential experience. Your thoughts? Karoline remained composed. Experience matters, but so does fresh perspective. Today's problems demand both experience and innovation. If we silence younger voices, we lose valuable insights. It shouldn't be a battle between generations. It should be collaboration, mutual learning. Karoline's interview resonated powerfully across the country. She wasn't merely defending herself. She was reshaping how people talk about youth and politics. Social media exploded with support, especially from younger voters. Thousands shared personal stories about being dismissed or overlooked, echoing Karoline's call for respect and collaboration. But predictably, Karoline faced renewed criticism from her political opponents. They framed her as naive, overly idealistic, or merely performing for publicity. One prominent senator openly mocked her on another talk show, calling her a publicity-seeking child. Yet Karoline never wavered. She responded clearly, calmly, always emphasizing dignity and respect rather than engaging in bitter arguments. Her strength wasn't aggressive. It was rooted in sincerity and humility, qualities that resonated powerfully with ordinary Americans watching from home. Meanwhile, Senator Brennan privately wrestled with his own response to the controversy. Publicly, he'd apologized and expressed genuine remorse, but privately, he felt deeply unsettled. Karoline's confrontation had forced him into uncomfortable self-reflection, something rare in the hardened political culture of Washington. He sat quietly in his Senate office one evening, reviewing footage of their exchange again. Watching himself casually dismiss Karoline backstage was deeply uncomfortable, each replay sharpening his awareness of his own arrogance, something he'd previously refused to acknowledge. He'd built a political career on tough talk, sharp criticism, and fierce advocacy. But somewhere along the way, humility had disappeared. He'd become the very politician he once criticized, arrogant, dismissive, unwilling to listen to younger or opposing voices. Watching Karoline speak so courageously, so respectfully, he realized clearly how much he'd lost sight of what true leadership demanded. Brennan made a private decision. He would reach out to Karoline directly, not for political optics, but for genuine reconciliation. He called her quietly, personally, asking if she'd meet privately, without cameras, without publicity. She agreed without hesitation. They met quietly in a small office inside the Capitol building, away from cameras, aides or media. Brennan looked uncomfortable yet genuinely humble. Karoline, thank you for agreeing to speak privately. Public apologies are important, but I wanted to say this directly to you, face to face. I was wrong to dismiss you, wrong to underestimate you because of your age. You've shown a courage I respect deeply. Karoline listened quietly, sensing sincerity in his voice. I appreciate that, Senator. But honestly, it's not me personally that matters most. It's a broader issue. Younger people deserve respect and genuine opportunities to contribute. Brennan nodded, thoughtful. I lost sight of that truth. Politics makes it easy to forget humility, especially after decades in office. You reminded me clearly that experience alone doesn't equal wisdom. Karoline smiled slightly, softened by his honesty. Senator, wisdom comes from being willing to listen, even when it's uncomfortable. He chuckled softly, genuinely appreciative. You're wise beyond your years. Karoline, I misjudged you entirely. That won't happen again. Their conversation deepened comfortably. Brennan shared openly about his own early career struggles, recalling moments when he'd been dismissed or overlooked. He admitted honestly how those experiences had shaped his own defensive posture, transforming him from a genuine leader into a guarded politician. By the end of their private conversation, something profound had shifted. They weren't adversaries or rivals. They were simply two leaders determined to reclaim the dignity and respect politics desperately needed. Later, alone again in her office, Karoline reflected carefully on the extraordinary journey her confrontation had sparked. She knew clearly her work wasn't done, not merely regarding policy, but in reshaping attitudes toward youth, integrity, and leadership. Karoline's actions had ignited a movement, sparking vital conversations nationwide. Her courage to speak openly about respect, integrity, and humility had transformed political discourse, not through flashy promises or empty rhetoric, but by authentic example. Karoline understood clearly that her greatest challenges still lay ahead. Critics awaited her every move, opponents eager to find mistakes. Yet tonight, she felt genuine peace. She'd faced the storm head-on, stood firm without compromising respect, and emerged stronger. The country had witnessed not merely confrontation, but authentic leadership. Karoline hadn't silenced critics. She quietly inspired them to reconsider their own beliefs, actions, and biases. In the privacy of that quiet Capitol office, Karoline had reminded Senator Brennan and an entire nation what true leadership required, not merely experience, but humility, courage, and a willingness to listen genuinely, even to the youngest voice in the room. Her phone vibrated softly, breaking her thoughtful silence. A text from Brennan. Thank you again, Karoline. You've taught me more tonight than decades in politics ever could. The country needs leaders like you. Karoline smiled gently, grateful and deeply moved. Their reconciliation was powerful proof that genuine respect could transform even the harshest divisions, if only leaders had the courage to choose humility over pride. And Karoline was determined to keep choosing courage, authenticity, and dignity, no matter how challenging the journey became. Karoline Leavitt's courageous confrontation with Senator Brennan quickly became symbolic, capturing the attention not just of political insiders, but resonating with millions across America who had often felt overlooked or belittled because of their youth or supposed inexperience. Her authenticity on national television had stirred something deeper, a nationwide conversation about respect, humility, and the genuine power young leaders could wield if they simply refused to accept silence. Over the following days, the media frenzy gradually evolved from sensationalized headlines to a more substantive exploration of the deeper issues Karoline had raised. Panel discussions now examined the biases young politicians faced, exploring questions of respect, generational differences, and genuine leadership. Karoline found herself thrust unexpectedly to the forefront of these conversations, becoming not merely a participant but a powerful voice advocating deeper cultural and political understanding. Despite her public composure, Karoline privately struggled at times. Her confrontation had opened important doors, but it also intensified scrutiny from political opponents eager to exploit any misstep. Social media comments, even from anonymous critics, occasionally wounded her privately. Some dismiss her as attention-seeking or inexperienced, eager to reduce her bravery to simple political theater. Yet, Karoline had made a firm decision from the outset. She would never let criticism or mockery silence her again. Each negative comment, each dismissive headline, strengthened her resolve rather than weakening it. She knew the fight for respect, especially for young voices in leadership, was about far more than just herself. It was about reshaping the broader culture of politics itself. One evening, as Karoline sat quietly at her desk preparing remarks for an upcoming event, her phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. She hesitated briefly, then answered cautiously. "This is Karoline." The voice on the other end was warm, familiar yet unexpected. "Ms. Leavitt, this is Senator Angela Davies from Illinois. We never met, but I've been following your journey closely." Karoline felt surprise ripple through her. Senator Davies was known for her measured tone and bipartisan appeal, one of the few senators admired deeply on both sides of the aisle. "Senator Davies, it's an honor," Karoline replied, genuinely appreciative. Davies chuckled softly, sincerity evident. "Karoline, I wanted you to know that you started something powerful, something long overdue. Many of us, especially women and younger leaders, have faced exactly what you did, but most of us didn't have your courage. You've inspired a lot of people, including me." Karoline exhaled quietly, deeply touched. "Senator, I just did what I felt was right. But thank you, it means a lot." Davies continued warmly, sincerity clear. "Keep speaking truth, Karoline. You have support you might not see yet. Keep going." The call ended, but Karoline sat quietly for a long moment, moved deeply. Senator Davies was a respected figure, famously moderate, known for rising above partisanship. Her quiet encouragement carried profound meaning, reinforcing something Karoline had intuitively known all along, that respect, dignity, and courage transcended politics entirely. That weekend, Karoline accepted an invitation to a National Youth Leadership Summit in Boston, attended by thousands of young leaders from across the country. She knew this would be different from her usual appearances. This audience wasn't political analysts or pundits, but young leaders eager to see themselves represented authentically. Karoline took the stage confidently, standing before an eager audience. Bright lights illuminated hundreds of attentive faces, all fixed firmly upon her. She stepped forward, voice clear, powerful, yet gently authentic. "When I overheard Senator Brennan dismissing me, he wasn't just dismissing my age or inexperience. He was dismissing an entire generation, our voices, our concerns, our right to participate fully. But the truth is, we are no longer waiting silently for permission to speak. Leadership isn't a privilege reserved for those who've spent decades in politics. It's a responsibility each of us must claim right now, today." The audience applauded warmly, enthusiasm growing. Karoline paused briefly, feeling renewed confidence. She continued calmly, powerfully. "Our generation is too often dismissed as entitled, superficial, or uninformed. But look around this room, at your passion, your determination, your willingness to engage deeply with complex issues. Age doesn't define wisdom. Character does. Courage does. Integrity does. And today, I challenge you clearly, never accept dismissal. Never let anyone silence you, mock you, or question your dignity simply because you dare to speak." Her words resonated powerfully. Audience members nodded vigorously, some recording every word, others visibly moved. Karoline felt immense gratitude, realizing that her confrontation hadn't merely impacted herself, but countless others who needed someone willing to speak truth clearly, courageously, without hesitation. She finished passionately, sincerity resonating deeply throughout the whole. When someone dismisses your voice, stand firm. When they underestimate your worth, prove them wrong, not through anger or division, but through dignity, humility, and undeniable courage. Our generation is not merely tomorrow's leaders. We are today's change makers. Let's never allow anyone to silence us again. The audience erupted instantly into applause, loud, emotional, genuinely appreciative. Karoline stood humbly, profoundly grateful, knowing she'd spoken words that weren't merely inspiring, but necessary. Across the city, Senator Brennan watched Karoline's speech quietly in his office, thoughtful, deeply reflective. Since their encounter, he'd found himself unexpectedly confronting uncomfortable truths about his own political journey, the arrogance, dismissiveness, and casual disrespect that had quietly crept into his daily interactions. His senior aide approached gently, sensing his silence. "Senator, what's on your mind?" Brennan hesitated, then sighed quietly, deeply sincere. Karoline Leavitt forced me to face something I never truly wanted to see, the arrogance we too often tolerate here. Her courage reminded me clearly of what politics should really represent: integrity, humility, dignity. His aide hesitated, curious yet uncertain. "Senator, you didn't intend any harm that night." Brennan shook his head slowly. "Maybe not intentionally, but that doesn't excuse it. The truth is, Karoline was right. I dismissed her simply because of age. It was disrespectful, wrong. And when she confronted me, my instinct was to get defensive, double down. But she showed genuine integrity, a willingness to confront the uncomfortable truth publicly, respectfully. It was extraordinary courage, and I've learned from it." His aide nodded quietly, respecting the senator's rare vulnerability. Brennan leaned back thoughtfully. Perhaps this could change things. Politics shouldn't be about who has the loudest voice or longest tenure. It should be about who speaks with sincerity, authenticity, respect. Karoline Leavitt reminded me of that, something I won't soon forget. Back in her apartment, Karoline relaxed quietly, watching the skyline from her window, reflecting carefully. Messages continued flooding in from supporters nationwide, young leaders, students, and even respected politicians sharing private stories of being similarly dismissed. She realized something profound, that her confrontation wasn't merely a viral moment. It had become a genuine catalyst for conversation, reflection, and potentially meaningful change within the culture of American politics. Just then, another message arrived, this time from Senator Brennan. Short, sincere, quietly powerful. "Karoline, your words today move me deeply. Thank you for reminding all of us what true leadership really demands. Never lose your courage. It's precisely what our nation needs." Karoline smiled warmly, recognizing how much genuine humility those words required. She replied sincerely, "Thank you, Senator. Your honesty means more than you know." She knew clearly their interaction had shifted something deeply meaningful, not merely between two politicians, but within a nation hungry for respectful dialogue. And Karoline now fully embraced her unexpected role, not merely as spokesperson, but as a powerful voice for dignity, humility, and courageous authenticity in public life. As the evening wore on, Karoline felt genuine clarity about her path ahead. It wouldn't be easy. Political battles never were. Yet tonight, beneath the quiet peace of reflection, Karoline understood fully the power of her voice, the courage to speak clearly, respectfully, and firmly, demanding respect not only for herself but for every person dismissed simply for being young. Tonight, she knew one truth clearly. Courage wasn't simply found in confrontation, it was found in authenticity. And she would continue speaking her truth, clearly, respectfully, powerfully, no matter how difficult the road became. In the weeks following Karoline's powerful public confrontation and subsequent televised interviews, she noticed a remarkable shift occurring not only within the political landscape but within broader society. Her decision to stand up respectfully but firmly against dismissiveness sparked something much larger than just a viral moment. It had ignited a genuine national conversation about respect, humility, and generational dialogue in politics. Social media was now filled not only with comments supporting Karoline, but also with deeply personal stories shared by younger voters who had experienced similar dismissiveness in their own lives. Hashtags like #RespectNotAge and #VoiceNotExperience began trending consistently, highlighting a groundswell of support for Karoline's message. Respect must never be conditional upon age or seniority. Karoline saw clearly that her actions had tapped into something powerful, an authentic hunger among young Americans for genuine representation, meaningful participation, and sincere recognition of their voices. Her small act of courage had quickly blossomed into a movement, one fueled by sincerity, dignity, and genuine passion. Soon, Karoline found herself invited to speak at prestigious institutions nationwide, universities, leadership forums, policy think tanks, all eager to hear directly from the young woman who'd ignited such meaningful national conversation. Initially cautious, Karoline soon realized clearly how important it was to embrace these opportunities, not merely as a political figure, but as someone who genuinely understood the deeper cultural shift her story represented. One evening, Karoline found herself standing quietly on stage at Harvard University. The historic hall was filled to capacity, hundreds of students, professors, political leaders, and journalists waiting attentively to hear her speak. Standing beneath bright stage lights, she began her speech calmly, clearly, powerfully. Today, I'm here because of one uncomfortable moment, a private comment I wasn't supposed to hear. But more importantly, I'm here because of how I chose to respond. Confronting disrespect isn't easy. It isn't comfortable. But silence, when faced with dismissiveness or injustice, isn't just compliance, it's complicity. The audience listened intently, captivated by Karoline's sincerity. Our society often assumes youth equals inexperience, idealism without substance. But true wisdom isn't defined by age. It's defined by empathy, humility, respect. Leadership isn't measured simply by years in office, but by integrity, character, and courage to speak clearly even when others demand silence. Applause erupted powerfully, genuinely enthusiastic, appreciative. Karoline paused, quietly gathering her thoughts. Each of us, regardless of age, holds the power to shape our society, but only if we refuse silence. Only if we choose courage instead of complacency, dignity instead of convenience, and empathy over arrogance. This is our challenge, not merely to speak truth clearly, but to truly listen when others speak. Her words resonated profoundly. Karoline realized clearly the immense impact her experience had created, not simply for herself, but for an entire generation demanding respect. Simultaneously, Senator Brennan quietly faced a personal reckoning of his own. Following Karoline's courageous example, Brennan began reflecting carefully on his decades-long political career. The more he reflected, the clearer it became how disconnected he had grown, too comfortable, too accustomed to dismissing ideas that challenged his own worldview. Privately, Brennan began reaching out to younger colleagues, genuinely seeking their perspectives, listening carefully rather than dismissively. Initially surprised, his peers cautiously engaged with him, skeptical but hopeful. Over weeks, Brennan's sincerity became evident to everyone. His humility wasn't mere public relations. It was genuinely reflective, sincere, transformational. One evening, Senator Brennan appeared unexpectedly at an event organized by young congressional staffers, junior aides, assistants, interns, people often invisible in Washington's hierarchical world. When he took the stage, silence filled the room instantly. Brennan spoke quietly yet sincerely. Recently, someone reminded me clearly of something I'd forgotten: humility. I dismissed Karoline Leavitt simply because she was young. It was shameful, wrong, and beneath the dignity of my office. Today, I'm here not merely to apologize publicly, but to offer genuine respect, something long overdue. Experience matters, but wisdom comes from listening carefully, especially to voices we're tempted to dismiss. Applause filled the room powerfully. Many attendees, young and often overlooked, felt deeply moved. Brennan's humility inspired genuine conversation, quietly reshaping attitude within Capitol Hill. Later that evening, Karoline received countless messages from attendees, moved deeply by Senator Brennan's sincerity. She smiled warmly, deeply grateful their confrontation had sparked something profound, not mere controversy, but genuine transformation, dignity, humility, and meaningful respect across generations. Nationally, the conversation Karoline began grew steadily deeper. Schools nationwide began incorporating discussions of ageism, respect, and leadership into curricula, prompting genuine conversations across generations. Karoline frequently received invitations to speak with youth groups, student leaders, and civic organizations, all eager to discuss authentic leadership. Media coverage shifted subtly, too. Discussions became less about sensational confrontation and more about substantive reflection. Commentators began acknowledging Karoline not merely as a controversial figure, but as a genuine leader challenging deeply ingrained attitudes that had marginalized younger voices for decades. A bipartisan group of lawmakers publicly invited Karoline to consult on youth engagement policy, acknowledging openly her valuable insights. Privately, senators and representatives sought her guidance on how to better engage and respect younger constituents. Karoline saw clearly how profoundly her confrontation had shifted perceptions, not merely about herself, but about the broader culture of politics. Late one evening, alone in her quiet apartment, Karoline wrote reflectively in her journal, capturing thoughts she rarely shared publicly. When I overheard Senator Brennan's comments, I had a choice: remain quiet, avoid conflict, or speak up courageously. I chose courage, not because it was easy, but because dignity matters deeply, for every person, regardless of age or status. Now I understand fully that courage isn't loud confrontation. It's a quiet decision to speak truthfully, respectfully, even when silence would be simpler. She exhaled gently, feeling profound peace. Her journey hadn't been easy, but every difficult moment was meaningful. Karoline understood clearly she had become a voice not merely for youth but for dignity itself, a voice she vowed never again to silence. One morning, her phone vibrated softly. Karoline answered curiously, then nearly dropped the phone in surprise. The White House were calling. A calm voice came through clearly. "Ms. Leavitt, this is the President's office. The President would like to personally meet with you." Karoline sat quietly stunned. "Of course. When?" "As soon as possible." A few days later, Karoline Leavitt stood quietly outside the Oval Office, pulse quickening slightly as the weight of the moment settled over her. She had never imagined herself standing here, waiting to speak directly with the President of the United States. She'd always believed in the power of speaking truth, but had never dreamed her words would carry so far. She had never imagined herself standing here, waiting to speak directly with the President of the United States. She'd always believed in the power of speaking truth, but had never dreamed her words would carry so far. The door opened, and a calm voice invited her inside. The President stood warmly, stepping forward with a sincere smile and offering his hand. "Karoline, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." Karoline settled into the chair opposite him, heart beating fast yet steady. The President's gaze was thoughtful, sincere, and deeply respectful. "I've watched your journey closely," he began earnestly. "Your courage to confront Senator Brennan and stand firm on national television reminded us all of something critical. Leadership demands humility, dignity, and mutual respect. You've inspired millions of young Americans. You've also reminded older generations, myself included, about the value of humility." Karoline felt herself relax slightly, genuinely appreciative. "Thank you, Mr. President. My intention was never about confrontation alone, but about making sure young people are treated with the same respect we ask from them." He nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. Your actions have sparked a critical national conversation, not just about age, but about respect, integrity, and leadership itself." Karoline hesitated briefly, gathering courage. "Mr. President, if we truly want meaningful change, younger voices must be heard, not just listened to politely, but genuinely engaged. Too often, experience is used as a reason to silence or dismiss youth entirely." The President smiled slightly, clearly impressed by her respectful candor. "You're right, Karoline. Your story resonates because you express that truth clearly, respectfully, and courageously. That's precisely the leadership America needs more of." Their conversation continued comfortably, openly, the President genuinely curious about Karoline's insights, asking thoughtful questions about how to meaningfully integrate younger voices into policy discussions. As their time drew to a close, he spoke sincerely again. "Karoline, your voice matters deeply. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Our country is stronger when young leaders like you refuse silence, demand respect, and speak authentically. You reminded all of us, myself included, how crucial humility truly is." Karoline rose, genuinely moved. "Thank you, Mr. President. I deeply appreciate your sincerity." He extended his hand again warmly. "Thank you, Karoline, for reminding us what leadership truly demands." As Karoline left the Oval Office, she felt profound gratitude, knowing clearly her decision to confront dismissiveness had transformed not merely her own journey, but perhaps the political landscape itself. That evening, back home in her quiet apartment, Karoline reflected thoughtfully on the incredible path she'd traveled, an unexpected journey sparked by a single overheard remark. Her confrontation had begun as a personal choice, yet had grown rapidly into something far greater, a nationwide movement demanding mutual respect, humility, and genuine inclusion. She now understood clearly that her greatest impact wasn't just confronting Senator Brennan, or even meeting the President. It was igniting courage within others to speak truth clearly, respectfully, authentically. Karoline knew clearly that her journey wasn't finished. It was only beginning. Yet tonight, reflecting deeply on the powerful conversation sparked nationwide, she felt peace. Her voice mattered deeply, not simply as a young politician, but as a sincere advocate for dignity itself. She opened her journal, thoughtfully writing once again, "Tonight, I'm grateful, not for attention or headlines, but because my voice encouraged others to find theirs. If my courage inspires someone else's, if my willingness to speak clearly sparked respect and humility, then everything was worth it." Karoline closed her journal, exhaling gently, profoundly grateful. She knew clearly that the true measure of leadership wasn't merely influence, power, or headlines. It was courage to speak truth, humility to listen carefully, and authenticity to lead by example. In the following weeks and months, Karoline continued speaking widely: schools, town halls, congressional forums, each appearance reinforcing clearly what she'd always intuitively understood. Genuine respect begins with courage. Her impact was powerful, transforming how politics viewed youth, changing the culture within Capitol Hill itself. Senior politicians became more mindful, younger leaders spoke more confidently, and mutual respect gradually replaced casual dismissal. Karoline's legacy wasn't simply confrontation, it was transformation. Through courage, humility, and authenticity, she reminded everyone clearly that respect belonged to all, regardless of age, experience, or position. Years later, Karoline would reflect warmly on that pivotal night, grateful that when given the choice between silence and courage, she chose courage. Because in that single moment, she'd begun transforming not just her own path, but the course of leadership itself, forever reminding America the profound power hidden within respectful courage. In the months following her meeting with the president, Karoline Leavitt dedicated herself fully to promoting meaningful dialogue between generations. Her powerful confrontation with Senator Brennan had ignited an essential conversation about respect and humility, but Karoline recognized clearly that lasting change required ongoing engagement. She soon launched an ambitious initiative, the Generational Leadership Coalition, focused on building genuine understanding between experienced political leaders and emerging young voices. At first, many were skeptical, wary of another symbolic political gesture. But Karoline quickly proved that this coalition was far from symbolic. It was grounded in sincere dialogue, meaningful exchanges, and concrete action. The first event drew hundreds of participants to Washington, D.C., seasoned lawmakers, young political activists, and even community leaders from across the country. Karoline stepped onto the stage to welcome them, smiling warmly. "We've come here today because of a single uncomfortable truth. Too often, we speak about each other, not to each other. We dismiss instead of engage. We divide rather than collaborate. This coalition's goal isn't merely dialogue, it's transformation. Real respect comes from genuine listening, mutual humility, and courageous authenticity." Applause erupted warmly, enthusiasm growing visibly among attendees. The event quickly became something truly remarkable, not merely a political conference, but a powerful, respectful dialogue between generations who rarely engage in such authentic conversation. To the surprise of many, Senator Brennan himself became one of the coalition's strongest advocates. Initially hesitant, he had grown deeply inspired by Karoline's sincere courage and unwavering dignity. During the coalition's second major event, held in New York City, Brennan stood quietly beside Karoline on stage, humbly addressing the gathered audience. When Karoline first confronted me publicly, I admit my reaction was anger, embarrassment. But soon I realized clearly how necessary her courage was. She reminded me that arrogance isn't leadership. Humility is. Experience without empathy isn't wisdom. It's merely authority. Today, I stand beside Karoline proudly, not merely as a senator, but as someone who learned profoundly from her example. His sincere admission moved the audience deeply. Brennan had publicly embraced humility, fully recognizing his own mistakes, genuinely learning from them. His powerful, authentic transformation inspired countless others to reconsider their own biases and dismissive attitudes. Karoline smiled warmly, deeply appreciative of Brennan's authenticity. Privately, he had become a genuine mentor to her, offering invaluable advice on navigating the complexities of political life, sincerely committed to supporting her journey. As her national profile grew, Karoline received prestigious invitations to speak internationally, invited to represent the U.S. at forums on youth leadership, democracy, and intergenerational dialogue. Each invitation reinforced clearly how profoundly her courageous confrontation had resonated, not merely within America, but globally. During one powerful speech before the United Nations Youth Summit, Karoline addressed thousands of international delegates passionately. Respect isn't merely an American issue, it's global. Everywhere, young people are told their voices are too inexperienced, too idealistic. But this ignores something vital. Wisdom doesn't come only from experience. It comes from authenticity, empathy, humility, qualities young leaders possess profoundly. Today, I call on all nations to embrace not only youth voices, but mutual respect across generations. Her speech received a standing ovation, delegates deeply moved by her powerful sincerity. Leaders from dozens of countries privately approached Karoline afterward, inspired profoundly by her authenticity, courage, and clear commitment to building genuine dialogue. As the coalition grew, Karoline emphasized mentorship as a key element of genuine intergenerational respect. Senior political figures partnered thoughtfully with younger activists, each sincerely committing to ongoing dialogue, learning from each other respectfully, humbly, authentically. Karoline herself mentored dozens of younger activists, genuinely committed to empowering them not only politically but personally. She emphasized clearly the power of authenticity, humility, and dignity as core leadership qualities that had transformed her own journey profoundly. Each mentorship session became deeply meaningful, not merely because of political lessons, but because Karoline sincerely emphasized respect, dignity, and humility. Her mentees consistently grew more confident, authentic, and courageous, empowered deeply by Karoline's powerful example. Late one evening, years after that pivotal confrontation, Karoline quietly reflected on her journey, grateful profoundly for the extraordinary path her courage had opened. Her legacy wasn't merely political, it was cultural, deeply rooted in respect, authenticity, humility, and courage. She penned a thoughtful journal entry. I never expected a single moment, a simple confrontation, to transform my journey so deeply. Yet today, I see clearly how essential courage is. Courage isn't merely confronting injustice, it's living authentically, respectfully, humbly every single day. If my life teaches anything, let it be this: never underestimate profound power hidden within authentic courage and respectful humility. As Karoline closed her journal, she smiled warmly, deeply grateful. Her legacy wasn't mere political influence, it was transformational. By courageously confronting dismissiveness, she had profoundly reshaped perceptions of leadership itself, not just for herself, but for generations of leaders yet to come. And Karoline knew clearly she would continue choosing courage, humility, and authenticity every single day, knowing profoundly that true leadership wasn't defined by age or experience alone, but by the sincerity, empathy, and respect she consistently embraced and exemplified. As time passed, the ripples from Karoline's confrontation with Senator Brennan continued quietly but powerfully, reshaping both political conversations and public attitude across America. What had once been a fleeting viral moment had evolved into a sustained national movement, deeply rooted in respect, humility, and courageous authenticity. Karoline, now widely respected as a powerful advocate for intergenerational dialogue and political civility, continued speaking across the country and around the world, tirelessly promoting the core values she demonstrated so clearly: humility, respect, and meaningful dialogue. Yet despite her soaring national profile, Karoline remained deeply grounded, humble, and authentic, never losing sight of a simple truth that had guided her from the very beginning. Dignity belonged to everyone, irrespective of age, experience, or status. One sunny afternoon, Karoline sat quietly in a small cafe near Capitol Hill, sipping coffee while reviewing notes for an upcoming speech. Nearby, a young woman approached nervously, notebook in hand. "Ms. Leavitt?" The young woman asked softly, her voice hesitant yet determined. Karoline smiled warmly, sensing familiar courage in her nervousness. "Please, call me Karoline. How can I help?" "My name is Amanda," the young woman continued, gaining confidence slightly. "I followed your journey since your encounter with Senator Brennan years ago. It inspired me profoundly. I'm now running for local office because of you." Karoline felt genuinely moved. "Amanda, that means so much. But tell me, why did my story resonate with you?" Amanda hesitated thoughtfully. "Because you didn't just confront disrespect. You stood firmly yet respectfully. Your courage reminded me clearly that youth isn't something to apologize for, that leadership isn't measured in age, but in character and integrity. Your courage gave me courage." Karoline's eyes softened deeply. She'd heard similar sentiments countless times over the years, yet each time profoundly moved her, reaffirming clearly that her choice to speak truthfully and respectfully that night had ignited something far greater than herself alone. "Thank you, Amanda," Karoline replied sincerely. "Remember this clearly. Never let anyone silence you simply because of your age or supposed inexperience. Speak authentically, humbly, and courageously, always." Amanda smiled broadly, deeply grateful, clearly inspired. As Amanda left, Karoline reflected quietly, deeply grateful. Her confrontation had done far more than reshape a single senator's attitude. It had profoundly transformed a generation's sense of possibility, courage, and dignity. Years after their initial confrontation, Karoline received unexpected news. Senator Brennan had announced he was retiring from public office. On his final day in the Senate, Brennan invited Karoline personally to visit him in his office, something she quickly and respectfully accepted. Inside the senator's office, Brennan greeted Karoline warmly, sincerity clear in his eyes. "Karoline," he began earnestly, "before leaving public office, I wanted to thank you personally, not only for your courage, but for your authenticity. When you confronted me years ago, it deeply unsettled me, but it also profoundly changed me." Karoline smiled gently, humbled by a sincere gratitude. "Senator Brennan, I always respected you deeply, even when confronting you publicly. Your humility after our encounter inspired countless others. I genuinely admire that." Brennan exhaled softly, reflecting carefully. "Your words reminded me clearly what politics should truly be, not division, not arrogance, but mutual respect, genuine humility, authentic dialogue. I failed to uphold those ideals before, but you reminded me powerfully how essential they are." Karoline sat quietly, moved deeply. She responded warmly, sincerely. "Senator, your willingness to change, not merely publicly, but privately, genuinely, demonstrates clearly what true leadership demands: humility, integrity, and courage to grow, even after decades in power." Brennan smiled softly, sincerely appreciative. "Karoline, thank you for your courage, for your sincerity, and for reminding me so profoundly of humility's genuine power." Their conversation continued quietly, warmly, thoughtfully reflecting on the transformational journey they'd shared. Karoline left that evening deeply grateful, not only for Brennan's genuine transformation, but for the powerful national conversation their interaction had sparked, quietly yet permanently reshaping America's political landscape. Eventually, Karoline received prestigious national recognition, honored publicly for her tireless advocacy for respect, dignity, and intergenerational dialogue. During the ceremony, Karoline stepped quietly onto the stage, surrounded warmly by applause and genuine appreciation. Yet as she stood quietly before the microphone, she felt compelled clearly to remind everyone what truly mattered. "Tonight, this honor isn't merely about me. It belongs genuinely to every young voice ever dismissed or overlooked. It belongs to every person courageous enough to demand respect, dignity, and humility, especially when it's difficult. My journey wasn't extraordinary because I confronted disrespect. It was meaningful because I chose clearly to live authentically and respectfully, regardless of circumstance or consequence." The applause grew louder, profoundly sincere. Karoline paused, deeply grateful, then continued calmly yet powerfully. "Let this award remind all of us clearly of something essential. Dignity belongs to everyone. Leadership isn't defined by age or seniority. It's defined profoundly by courage, humility, and authentic respect. If my life reminds even one person of this truth, then every difficult moment was deeply worthwhile." Karoline stepped back quietly, warmly humbled as applause echoed powerfully throughout the hall, deeply moved by a sincere humility, authentic dignity, and courageous example. As years passed quietly yet profoundly, Karoline's legacy endured deeply, not merely as a political figure, but as an authentic example of genuine courage, humility, and dignity. Schools, community organizations, and political forums nationwide frequently shared her story, inspiring countless young leaders to speak courageously, authentically, respectfully. Privately, Karoline continued mentoring younger generations, genuinely committed to empowering authentic, respectful, courageous leadership among America's youth. Her mentorship was quiet yet profoundly impactful, inspiring sincere courage, authentic humility, and unwavering dignity among young leaders nationwide. Late one evening, now many years removed from that initial confrontation, Karoline sat quietly at her desk, reflecting carefully once again on her extraordinary journey. She opened her journal thoughtfully, writing slowly. My life changed profoundly the night I confronted Senator Brennan, not merely because I demanded respect, but because I refused silence. That single choice to speak courageously, authentically, humbly, reshaped my life and, perhaps quietly, the lives of countless others. Tonight, I see clearly that courage isn't merely confrontation. It's a lifelong commitment to authenticity, humility, and respect. If my journey reminds anyone clearly of this truth, my legacy has genuine meaning. Closing her journal, Karoline smiled quietly, deeply grateful. Her legacy wasn't simply political confrontation. It was genuine transformation, authentic courage, humility, and profound respect. And she knew clearly her journey would continue inspiring generations yet to come, quietly yet powerfully reminding everyone of profound power hidden within courageous authenticity, sincere humility, and genuine respect. As Karoline's influence continued to grow, she dedicated more of her life not simply to politics, but to mentoring younger generations who aspired to make genuine, meaningful impacts of their own. Her experiences, once difficult and challenging, had become powerful lessons that guided countless aspiring leaders nationwide. One morning, Karoline stood before a classroom of high school students in her hometown, a small community deeply proud of what she had become. She scanned the eager, hopeful faces, remembering clearly when she herself said exactly what they did, listening curiously as someone else stood before them, offering wisdom. Today, Karoline began warmly, I want you to understand something clearly. Leadership isn't about how loud your voice is or how powerful your position might be. True leadership comes from courage, integrity, humility, and genuine empathy. It's not about how others see you, but about who you choose to be when no one is watching. A young student in the back raised his hand cautiously. Ms. Leavitt, how do you find courage to speak up when people dismiss you? Karoline smiled gently, recognizing his quiet vulnerability clearly. Because remaining silent is always easier, yet rarely the right choice. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the choice to act despite it. When someone dismisses you, remember clearly that their dismissal says more about their limitations than your potential. The class listened intently, deeply inspired, absorbing every word. Another student asked thoughtfully, have you ever regretted confronting Senator Brennan? Karoline paused briefly, reflecting honestly. No. Initially, confrontation felt uncomfortable, but that discomfort is often necessary for meaningful growth. If we shy away from uncomfortable moments, we surrender our potential to truly change things. My choice to speak that day didn't just reshape my life, it profoundly changed how others saw themselves. The students nodded respectfully, absorbing Karoline's authentic wisdom deeply. A year later, Karoline received an unexpected invitation. Amanda, the young woman who'd once nervously approached her, was now elected as the youngest city councilor in their state. She invited Karoline to attend her inauguration as a special guest, an invitation Karoline immediately and proudly accepted. Standing quietly backstage that day, Karoline watched warmly as Amanda confidently stepped forward, delivering a powerful inaugural speech filled with sincerity, humility, and courageous authenticity, qualities clearly inspired by Karoline's own example years earlier. Afterward, Amanda approached Karoline, eyes glistening with genuine gratitude. I'm here today because of you, Amanda said earnestly. Your courage that night, your willingness to stand up firmly but respectfully, that moment inspired me profoundly. You taught me clearly that my voice mattered deeply, even if others dismissed me. Karoline's eyes softened sincerely. Amanda, you are always courageous. I merely reminded you clearly that your courage was already within you. Never forget how deeply your voice matters. Use your position not merely to lead, but to inspire others to find their courage, too. Amanda nodded warmly, sincerely grateful, recognizing clearly that Karoline's mentorship had profoundly reshaped her own life. As Karoline approached the peak of her public career, she received a special national honor, a prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award recognizing her relentless advocacy for intergenerational respect, authenticity, and courageous leadership. During the ceremony, Senator Brennan himself surprised everyone, appearing publicly to personally present Karoline's award, a moment profoundly meaningful to both of them. Standing quietly beside Karoline on stage, Senator Brennan spoke gently yet powerfully. "Years ago, I made the mistake of dismissing Karoline because of her age. It was arrogant, wrong, and something I deeply regret. But Karoline's courageous response taught me profoundly what real leadership demands: humility, integrity, and respect. Today, as I proudly honor Karoline, let this remind all of us clearly that wisdom isn't defined by age, but by authenticity, humility, and genuine empathy." Karoline stood quietly, deeply humbled as applause filled the room sincerely. When Karoline stepped forward gently to speak, her voice resonated authentically. Tonight, this honor truly belongs to every young leader who's been dismissed or underestimated. It belongs to every courageous voice who refused silence. If my journey inspires anyone clearly to speak courageously, authentically, humbly, then my life's greatest work is fulfilled. Thank you. The audience rose spontaneously, moved deeply by Karoline's profound sincerity, humility, and unwavering authenticity. Years after her public journey began, Karoline sat quietly in her home, reflecting thoughtfully on the incredible path she'd traveled. Her walls, lined gently with photos, moments captured from years of authentic leadership, respectful dialogue, and meaningful mentorship, serve as quiet reminders clearly of the power hidden within genuine humility and courageous authenticity. She opened her journal again, thoughtfully penning her quiet reflections clearly. Tonight, looking back on my life, I understand clearly the profound importance of courage, not simply courage to confront, but courage to live authentically, respectfully, humbly every day. Leadership wasn't about confronting Senator Brennan, or meeting presidents, or receiving awards. It was always about choosing courage consistently, inspiring others clearly, and reminding everyone that their voices truly mattered deeply. She closed her journal gently, deeply grateful for a life spent meaningfully. Decades later, when Karoline quietly retired from public life, countless tributes poured in nationwide, each a powerful reminder clearly of the profound impact her authentic courage, genuine humility, and respectful example had created. Thousands of younger leaders nationwide, now serving respectfully and authentically, proudly shared publicly how Karoline's example had profoundly reshaped their own journeys, courageously guiding them clearly toward lives of genuine impact, respect, humility, and meaningful authenticity. Karoline's legacy endured powerfully, not merely as a historical figure, but as an ongoing inspiration profoundly reminding future generations clearly of their own potential for genuine leadership, courageous authenticity, and sincere humility. Even after she passed quietly many years later, Karoline's legacy continued powerfully, reminding each new generation clearly of the profound power hidden within respectful courage, authentic humility, and genuine dignity. And each new generation, empowered deeply by Karoline's example, continued speaking courageously, respectfully, authentically, transforming not just politics, but society itself profoundly and permanently. Karoline's courageous authenticity had created something lasting, deeply meaningful, not merely a political movement, but a legacy rooted powerfully in respect, dignity, humility, and genuine courage. And that legacy, clear, sincere, profoundly impactful, would endure quietly yet powerfully, forever reshaping the meaning of true leadership itself. Years passed, and Karoline Leavitt gracefully transitioned from the fast-paced intensity of public office into a quieter role as an elder stateswoman, mentor, and advocate. Despite stepping away from daily politics, she continued powerfully influencing national dialogue through her sincerity, humility, and authenticity. Late in her career, Karoline received one final invitation to address the nation publicly, a special televised speech honoring a milestone in national leadership development, symbolizing decades of progress inspired deeply by Karoline's courageous example. That evening, millions of Americans watched respectfully, eager to hear Karoline's final public reflections after a lifetime dedicated authentically to respectful dialogue, humility, and courageous leadership. As cameras rolled gently, Karoline began quietly yet powerfully, sincerity clear in every word. Tonight, I speak to you clearly not as someone special, but simply as a person who chose courage over silence. Many years ago, a senator mocked me privately, dismissing my voice solely because I was young. In that single uncomfortable moment, I faced a simple yet profound choice: remain silent or courageously speak truth. Karoline paused reflectively, voice steady yet gently emotional. I chose courage, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. That choice transformed my life, yes, but more importantly, it inspired countless others to courageously demand respect, dignity, and genuine humility. If my story reminds you of anything clearly tonight, let it be this: leadership isn't authority, seniority, or age. It's humility, courage, and authenticity. Across America, viewers listened deeply, profoundly moved by Karoline's genuine sincerity and authenticity. Karoline continued thoughtfully. Leadership demands humility to listen carefully, even when difficult truths confront us personally. It demands courage to speak authentically, even when silence feels safer. And above all, it demands respect, not conditional upon age, experience, or status, but genuinely recognizing the dignity every voice deserves. Applause resonated powerfully across the nation, profoundly sincere. Karoline finished gently, warmly. As I step away tonight, remember this clearly: never allow anyone's dismissal to silence you. Your voice matters profoundly, not because of age, experience, or position, but because dignity belongs authentically to everyone. Keep choosing courage, humility, and respect. That truly is leadership. Karoline stepped back quietly, genuinely humbled by the applause filling every room across America, a final, powerful testament clearly recognizing her lifelong courage, humility, and authenticity. Following her final public speech, Karoline quietly withdrew fully from public view, spending her remaining years peacefully mentoring younger generations privately, sharing authentic wisdom, humility, and guidance clearly shaped by decades of courageous leadership. Privately, Karoline was humbled profoundly by countless letters from former mentees, younger politicians, community leaders, and ordinary citizens, each sharing personal, sincere stories clearly illustrating how Karoline's authentic courage had profoundly reshaped their own lives. One day, as Karoline quietly read these letters, she felt profound peace, not merely because of her personal achievements, but because she had genuinely sparked authentic courage, respect, and humility in so many others. She understood clearly that true legacy was never measured simply by public accolades or powerful speeches, but profounded by lives genuinely transformed, dignity authentically recognized, and courage quietly inspired. Near the end of her life, Karoline sat quietly in her favorite chair, reflecting deeply once more on her incredible journey. Her great-granddaughter, Emily, sat curiously nearby, eyes bright, quietly eager to learn. "Grandma Karoline," Emily asked thoughtfully, "what does courage really mean?" Karoline smiled warmly, seeing clearly her younger self in Emily's genuine curiosity. She spoke gently yet powerfully. "Emily, courage isn't merely confronting people who dismiss you. It's a quiet yet profound choice to live authentically, speak truthfully, and respect everyone deeply, regardless of circumstance. Courage means knowing your worth clearly, even if others can't yet see it." Emily listened intently, absorbing every word profoundly. "Did you ever doubt yourself?" Karoline chuckled softly, sincerity clear. "Of course, but courage isn't the absence of doubt. It's choosing authenticity even when you're afraid, speaking truthfully even when silence feels safer. Never forget this clearly. Courage belongs authentically to everyone, especially when others doubt you." Emily nodded respectfully, deeply inspired. Karoline continued warmly. "Someday, Emily, someone may dismiss you simply because you're young, or different, or inexperienced. When that happens, remember clearly that their dismissal reflects their limitations, not yours. Speak authentically, courageously, humbly, and never doubt clearly the profound power hidden within your genuine voice." Emily smiled warmly, understanding clearly her grandmother's profound wisdom. She hugged Karoline tightly, deeply grateful, quietly absorbing authentic courage, humility, and respect, qualities Karoline had consistently demonstrated powerfully throughout her extraordinary life. When Karoline quietly passed away peacefully many years later, the nation mourned profoundly yet celebrated deeply the extraordinary legacy she left clearly behind. Her legacy wasn't merely political, it was profoundly cultural, reshaping authentically how leadership was defined, respect given, and courage embraced. Thousands attended her memorial, countless speakers profoundly sharing stories illustrating clearly how Karoline's authenticity, humility, and courageous leadership had permanently transformed their lives, communities, and the nation itself. Her granddaughter Emily, now grown into a powerful leader herself, stepped forward gently, emotionally speaking. Grandma Karoline's legacy was simple yet profound. She reminded us clearly that dignity belongs to everyone, humility matters profoundly, and authentic courage can genuinely transform lives. She taught me clearly to never doubt my worth, to always speak authentically, and to courageously choose respect every single day. If each of us embraces even a fraction of her courage clearly, the world genuinely transforms. Applause resonated powerfully, sincerely grateful for Karoline's profound legacy. And even as decades passed, Karoline's story continued quietly yet powerfully inspiring future generations clearly, reminding each new generation authentically the profound power courageously hidden within humility, authenticity, and genuine respect. Because Karoline Leavitt's legacy wasn't merely about her, it was about the powerful, authentic courage she inspired deeply in countless others, permanently reshaping how generations saw themselves, their voices, and their potential for genuinely meaningful leadership. Following Karoline's passing, her legacy continued thriving powerfully through the establishment of the Karoline Leavitt Foundation, an organization dedicated authentically to empowering younger generations, advocating respectful intergenerational dialogue, and fostering courageous leadership. The foundation quickly became nationally renowned, profoundly impacting thousands of lives each year. Young leaders nationwide received powerful mentorship, authentic support, and genuine opportunities for meaningful civic engagement, all inspired deeply by Karoline's personal values clearly: humility, respect, courage, and authenticity. Emily, Karoline's great-granddaughter, took a prominent role at the foundation, profoundly committed to preserving clearly her grandmother's powerful legacy of authentic leadership. Through her dedication, Emily ensured Karoline's story continued resonating powerfully, authentically inspiring new generations continually. Each year, the foundation hosted the Karoline Leavitt Leadership Summit, gathering thousands of young leaders nationwide, fostering respectful dialogue between emerging youth leaders and experienced political figures. At one summit, a young activist named Rachel approached Emily respectfully. "Your great-grandmother inspired me profoundly," Rachel said earnestly. Her courage to speak authentically, even when others dismissed her, those stories gave me strength clearly to run for public office myself. Emily smiled warmly, recognizing Karoline's authentic influence clearly. "Rachel, your courage honors a memory profoundly. My grandmother always reminded everyone clearly, never underestimate the power hidden within genuine authenticity, humility, and courageous respect." Rachel nodded warmly, deeply grateful. Karoline's example changed countless lives, not simply through what she said, but clearly through how she lived authentically each day. These moments continually affirm the profound importance clearly of Karoline's courageous legacy, not merely as history, but as ongoing inspiration authentically shaping future generations. Years after Karoline's passing, her hometown unveiled a public memorial honoring her legacy profoundly. Thousands attended the ceremony respectfully, clearly recognizing how deeply Karoline's authenticity had reshaped their lives personally and their community profoundly. At the ceremony, Senator Brennan, now long retired, stood humbly beside Emily, reflecting clearly on Karoline's profound impact. "Many years ago, I made the mistake clearly of dismissing Karoline simply because she was young. Today, standing here, I understand profoundly how deeply wrong that was. Karoline taught me clearly, and taught America powerfully, that respect isn't conditional upon age or status. True leadership demands humility, authenticity, and genuine courage." Emily spoke warmly afterward. "Today, we honor Grandma Karoline not simply because of what she achieved publicly, but profoundly because of who she was privately. She taught me clearly that courage doesn't require power, It demands authenticity. Respect isn't earned solely through experience. It's given genuinely through humility. Applause resonated powerfully, deeply sincere. Karoline's legacy, clearly embodied in Emily's heartfelt words, continued resonating profoundly. Decades passed gently, yet Karoline's legacy continued authentically influencing generations powerfully. Schools nationwide included Karoline's story thoughtfully in their curricula, profoundly inspiring young students to embrace authentic leadership, respectful courage, and genuine humility. Political forums regularly invoke Karoline's powerful example clearly, reminding participants authentically that respect, humility, and courageous authenticity must profoundly define public service. Privately, countless individuals shared personal stories of being genuinely inspired by Karoline's authentic legacy clearly, story profoundly demonstrating how her courage had quietly yet powerfully reshaped their lives. On what would have been Karoline's 100th birthday, her hometown hosted a profoundly emotional celebration. Thousands gathered respectfully, deeply moved clearly by memories of Karoline's extraordinary life. During the ceremony, Emily, now herself approaching retirement, stepped forward gently, profoundly reflective. Grandma Karoline's legacy was simple yet profound. She reminded us clearly that dignity belongs to everyone, humility matters profoundly, and authentic courage can genuinely transform lives. She taught me clearly to never doubt my worth, to always speak authentically, and to courageously choose respect every single day. If each of us embraces even a fraction of her courage clearly, the world genuinely transforms. Applause resonated powerfully, sincerely grateful for Karoline's profound legacy. And even as decades passed, Karoline's story continued quietly yet powerfully inspiring future generations clearly, reminding each new generation authentically the profound power courageously hidden within humility, authenticity, and genuine respect. Because Karoline Leavitt's legacy wasn't merely about her, it was about the powerful, authentic courage she inspired deeply in countless others, permanently reshaping how generations saw themselves, their voices, and their potential for genuinely meaningful leadership. Following Karoline's passing, her legacy continued thriving powerfully through the establishment of the Karoline Leavitt Foundation, an organization dedicated authentically to empowering younger generations, advocating respectful intergenerational dialogue, and fostering courageous leadership. The foundation quickly became nationally renowned, profoundly impacting thousands of lives each year. Young leaders nationwide received powerful mentorship, authentic support, and genuine opportunity for meaningful civic engagement, all inspired deeply by Karoline's personal values clearly: humility, respect, courage, and authenticity. Emily, Karoline's great-granddaughter, took a prominent role at the foundation, profoundly committed to preserving clearly her grandmother's powerful legacy of authentic leadership. Through her dedication, Emily ensured Karoline's story continued resonating powerfully, authentically inspiring new generations continually. Each year, the foundation hosted the Karoline Leavitt Leadership Summit, gathering thousands of young leaders nationwide, fostering respectful dialogue between emerging youth leaders and experienced political figures. At one summit, a young activist named Rachel approached Emily respectfully. "Your great-grandmother inspired me profoundly," Rachel said earnestly. Her courage to speak authentically, even when others dismissed her, those stories gave me strength clearly to run for public office myself. Emily smiled warmly, recognizing Karoline's authentic influence clearly. "Rachel, your courage honors a memory profoundly. My grandmother always reminded everyone clearly, never underestimate the power hidden within genuine authenticity, humility, and courageous respect." Rachel nodded warmly, deeply grateful. Karoline's example changed countless lives, not simply through what she said, but clearly through how she lived authentically each day. These moments continually affirmed the profound importance clearly of Karoline's courageous legacy, not merely as history, but as ongoing inspiration authentically shaping future generations. Years after Karoline's passing, her hometown unveiled a public memorial honoring her legacy profoundly. Thousands attended the ceremony respectfully, clearly recognizing how deeply Karoline's authenticity had reshaped their lives personally and their community profoundly. At the ceremony, Senator Brennan, now long retired, stood humbly beside Emily, reflecting clearly on Karoline's profound impact. "Many years ago, I made the mistake clearly of dismissing Karoline simply because she was young. Today, standing here, I understand profoundly how deeply wrong that was. Karoline taught me clearly, and taught America powerfully, that respect isn't conditional upon age or status. True leadership demands humility, authenticity, and genuine courage. Emily spoke warmly afterward. Today, we honor Grandma Karoline not simply because of what she achieved publicly, but profoundly because of who she was privately. She taught me clearly that courage doesn't require power. It demands authenticity. Respect isn't earned solely through experience. It's given genuinely through humility. Applause resonated powerfully, deeply sincere. Karoline's legacy, clearly embodied in Emily's heartfelt words, continued resonating profoundly. Decades passed gently, yet Karoline's legacy continued authentically influencing generations powerfully. Schools nationwide included Karoline's story thoughtfully in their curricula, profoundly inspiring young students to embrace authentic leadership, respectful courage, and genuine humility. Political forums regularly invoke Karoline's powerful example clearly, reminding participants authentically that respect, humility, and courageous authenticity must profoundly define public service. Privately, countless individuals shared personal stories of being genuinely inspired by Karoline's authentic legacy clearly, stories profoundly demonstrating how her courage had quietly yet powerfully reshaped their lives. On what would have been Karoline's 100th birthday, her hometown hosted a profoundly emotional celebration. Thousands gathered respectfully, deeply moved clearly by memories of Karoline's extraordinary life. During the ceremony, Emily, now herself approaching retirement, stepped forward gently, profoundly reflective. My grandmother's legacy reminds us clearly that true courage doesn't demand attention. It inspires authenticity. Respect isn't loud. It's quiet humility. Leadership isn't found clearly in age or seniority. It's discovered authentically in genuine empathy and courageous integrity. Emily paused thoughtfully, deeply emotional, continuing powerfully. Today, let's honor Karoline by living clearly the values she demonstrated profoundly each day: authentic humility, courageous respect, and sincere empathy. Her legacy lives powerfully within each of us every time we choose authenticity clearly over convenience, humility over arrogance, and respect genuinely over dismissiveness. The applause echoed deeply, powerfully sincere. Karoline's legacy clearly lived profoundly within every heart present authentically that day. Centuries later, history books would still honor Karoline Leavitt powerfully, not merely as a political figure, but clearly as a timeless symbol of authentic leadership, courageous humility, and genuine respect. Scholars profoundly analyzed her remarkable influence clearly, not merely because of political impact, but genuinely because of the profound cultural shift she authentically inspired, clearly changing how leadership was viewed across generations permanently. Young students studied Karoline's example deeply, clearly inspired profoundly to embrace courageous authenticity, respectful humility, and genuine dignity, qualities powerfully reshaping their own journeys clearly. Karoline's story never faded authentically. Her profound example continually reminded new generations clearly that genuine courage, humble authenticity, and sincere respect profoundly define true leadership. Karoline Leavitt's remarkable journey had begun quietly with a single courageous confrontation, but evolved profoundly into something far deeper, a timeless legacy clearly rooted authentically in respect, humility, courage, and dignity. Her choice to speak truthfully, authentically, respectfully, reshaped lives powerfully, profoundly inspiring generations to embrace clearly their own courage and dignity. Her legacy endured deeply, not merely in memorials or history books, but genuinely within every heart inspired profoundly by her authentic example. Karoline's life taught clearly that courage isn't defined merely by confrontation. It's authentically revealed profoundly in humility, respect, and genuine authenticity. Her extraordinary journey reminded everyone powerfully, profoundly clearly. Authentic courage hidden quietly within each voice profoundly possessed a potential clearly to transform lives, reshape societies, and genuinely inspire lasting change. And through Karoline's authentic courage, profound humility, and genuine dignity, generations continue to discover clearly their own profound power authentically, forever inspired deeply by a timeless example clearly. Karoline Leavitt's courageous legacy lived authentically, profoundly, clearly, forever resonating powerfully within every heart genuinely inspired deeply by her extraordinary life. 100 years after Karoline Leavitt's courageous encounter with Senator Brennan, her hometown celebrated the centennial anniversary of that defining moment, an event now deeply embedded in American history. The town's streets overflowed with visitors from across the country, all drawn powerfully by Karoline's enduring legacy of courage, humility, and authenticity. During the centennial ceremony, historians, politicians, and community leaders gathered respectfully, reflecting clearly on how Karoline's brave confrontation had profoundly altered national perceptions around youth, respect, and leadership itself. A renowned historian addressed the audience thoughtfully. Today, we commemorate clearly the moment Karoline Leavitt courageously spoke truth, profoundly confronting a dismissive senator who underestimated her voice. That single act sparked an authentic national movement, forever reshaping American society. But Karoline's true legacy is more profound. She reminded us clearly that true leadership is humility, empathy, and courageous authenticity. She taught generations to believe authentically in their worth. The audience listened respectfully, deeply inspired, recognizing profoundly the genuine influence Karoline's legacy continued powerfully exerting even a century later. Soon after the centennial celebration, the National Archives opened a powerful exhibit honoring Karoline's profound legacy. Thousands visited respectfully, quietly moved by original artifacts, Karoline's personal journals, handwritten speeches, photographs capturing authentic moments clearly demonstrating her humility, courage, and authenticity. Visitors paused thoughtfully, deeply inspired clearly by Karoline's private reflections profoundly captured in her journal entries. One exhibit displayed prominently an entry she wrote thoughtfully shortly after confronting Senator Brennan. "Today, I chose clearly to speak truth, not because confrontation was easy, but profoundly because silence would have been complicity. I chose authenticity, humility, and respect, even amid discomfort. May this choice inspire clearly anyone doubting their voice's power. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, respectful authenticity." Many visitors found themselves deeply emotional reading Karoline's sincere words, recognizing profoundly the timeless relevance clearly of her authentic reflections, courageously inspiring new generations continually. Karoline's legacy soon transcended American borders authentically, profoundly resonating internationally. Governments, schools, and civic groups worldwide studied Karoline's example deeply, clearly inspired profoundly by her courageous authenticity, respectful humility, and genuine leadership. The United Nations commemorated Karoline officially, declaring an annual international observance, the International Day of Courageous Leadership, honoring authentically profound impact clearly of Karoline's humble courage. During the inaugural observance, global leaders spoke thoughtfully. Karoline Leavitt taught clearly humanity a profound lesson. True leadership demands courageous authenticity, humility, and sincere empathy. Today, we honor her legacy profoundly, not simply by remembering her courage, but authentically by embracing those values genuinely ourselves. This global recognition further cemented clearly Karoline's enduring legacy powerfully, transforming her courageous authenticity into a profoundly universal ideal clearly shaping leadership worldwide. Educational curricula globally began integrating Karoline's principles, clearly defined ideals authentically rooted in her lifelong values profoundly: humility, authenticity, courage, dignity, and respect. Students worldwide studied these principles thoughtfully, clearly understanding profoundly the timeless importance genuinely hidden within Karoline's courageous example. In classrooms worldwide, Karoline's principles were recited respectfully, profoundly guiding new generations clearly toward lives authentically embodying courage, humility, and genuine respect. One such principle clearly resonated powerfully. Authentic courage requires humility to listen deeply, respect to engage genuinely, and integrity clearly to speak truthfully, even amid discomfort. These simple yet profound ideals continually inspired clearly generations worldwide, authentically reshaping societies profoundly through Karoline's timeless courage, genuine humility, and authentic respect. A national memorial was eventually erected prominently in Washington, D.C., the Karoline Leavitt National Monument, honoring authentically Karoline's profound legacy of courageous humility, respectful authenticity, and genuine leadership. Visitors approached quietly, respectfully reading the monument's powerful inscription clearly capturing Karoline's lifelong ideals profoundly. Courage isn't defined authentically by confrontation alone. It is clearly demonstrated profoundly by humility to listen, authenticity to speak truth, and genuine respect clearly offered to all voices. This inscription profoundly moved visitors clearly, authentically reminding each new generation genuinely of the timeless power courageously hidden within respectful humility, sincere authenticity, and genuine dignity. As centuries passed gently, humanity continued authentically embracing Karoline's profound legacy powerfully, recognizing clearly that leadership demanded genuine humility, courageous authenticity, and sincere respect profoundly inspired by Karoline's remarkable example clearly. Future generations continually discovered authentically renewed meaning profoundly within Karoline's courageous story clearly, reminded powerfully that dignity genuinely belonged clearly to every voice, authenticity profoundly shaped genuine leadership, and humble courage authentically transformed societies permanently. Karoline's story continually inspired clearly, authentically enduring profoundly across centuries powerfully, an extraordinary legacy clearly rooted authentically within courage, humility, authenticity, and respect. Thousands of years later, humanity had profoundly evolved. Societies dramatically changed authentically, but Karoline Leavitt's courageous legacy continued clearly inspiring deeply. Ancient archives preserved authentically her profound words clearly, timeless wisdom genuinely teaching profoundly across generations authentically, reshaping societies profoundly through Karoline's timeless courage, genuine humility, and authentic respect. A national memorial was eventually erected prominently in Washington, D.C., the Karoline Leavitt National Monument, honoring authentically Karoline's profound legacy of courageous humility, respectful authenticity, and genuine leadership. Visitors approached quietly, respectfully reading the monument's powerful inscription clearly capturing Karoline's lifelong ideals profoundly. Courage isn't defined authentically by confrontation alone. It is clearly demonstrated profoundly by humility to listen, authenticity to speak truth, and genuine respect clearly offered to all voices. This inscription profoundly moved visitors clearly, authentically reminding each new generation genuinely of the timeless power courageously hidden within respectful humility, sincere authenticity, and genuine dignity. As centuries passed gently, humanity continued authentically embracing Karoline's profound legacy powerfully, recognizing clearly that leadership demanded genuine humility, courageous authenticity, and sincere respect profoundly inspired by Karoline's remarkable example clearly. Future generations continually discovered authentically renewed meaning profoundly within Karoline's courageous story clearly, reminded powerfully that dignity genuinely belonged clearly to every voice, authenticity profoundly shaped genuine leadership, and humble courage authentically transformed societies permanently. Karoline's story continually inspired clearly, authentically enduring profoundly across centuries powerfully, an extraordinary legacy clearly rooted authentically within courage, humility, authenticity, and respect. Thousands of years later, humanity had profoundly evolved. Societies dramatically changed authentically, but Karoline Leavitt's courageous legacy continued clearly inspiring deeply. Ancient archive preserved authentically her profound words clearly, timeless wisdom genuinely teaching profoundly across generations authentically. Leadership's greatest strength is not power clearly held, but courage profoundly demonstrated authentically through humility, genuine empathy, and respectful authenticity. Each voice deserves profound dignity. Never underestimate authentically the quiet courage clearly hidden within your own. Even in humanity's distant future, Karoline's authentic courage profoundly inspired clearly, reminding everyone genuinely that dignity, humility, respect, and courageous authenticity authentically define genuine leadership profoundly, eternally.